Answer questions.
Chairman Powell, you are the only bipartisan person or thing left in Washington. You were appointed by Obama. Trump gave you a promotion. Biden reappointed you. And you are the only Biden appointee not to hear the words, "You're fired," from our president. So I hope we listen to what you have to say, because you're the only person that I can identify in Washington that has support on both sides of the aisle. Mr. Huizenga mentions the importance of your dual mandate. Project 2025 calls for abolishing the dual mandate and eliminating a mandate that you focus on employment. If we were to give you just one mandate dealing with price stability and take away the mandate on employment, over the next 10 years, would our GDP be higher or lower?
It wouldn't be possible for me to say.
Does the fact that you focus on employment as one of your dual mandates lead to lower unemployment, higher employment in our country?
It may do so. We do balance those things.
Thank you.
To some extent, that may be right.
Chair Hill spoke about how important it is that you maintain your independence. I noticed that in light of the hiring freeze, the Fed has removed all its job postings. I'm hoping that your personnel policy will be as independent as everything else at the Fed. But I'm more concerned with the president's statement at 7:58 this morning, where he said interest rates should be lowered. He said it. Will that influence what the Fed actually does?
I, as a practice, never comment on anything the president says, but I think people can be confident that we'll continue to keep our heads down, do our work, make our decisions based on what's happening in the economy, the outlook,
And
the balance of
statements
risks.
by elected officials
change.
are not among the things that cause you to act one way or the other.
That's correct.
Thank you. And he went on to say, he said interest rates should be lowered, something which would go hand in hand with upcoming tariffs. Let's rock and roll America. I certainly agree with the rock and roll America, but the Peterson Institute says that the policies that the president ran on will raise the CPI by between 4 and 7.5 points. And I think the biggest element of that is the proposed tariffs. If we have higher tariffs across the board, say 10 to 25%, would that increase the cost of living? And would an increase in the CPI or related indexes of the cost of living lead to higher interest rates?
You know, there are many organizations, public and private, whose role is to speculate publicly about what this might be. What we're doing is we're reserving judgment until we actually know what the policies are.
But if we have a higher cost of living, does that lead to higher interest rates? The CPI goes up, or CPE, excuse me?
Well, if inflation goes up in general,
Yeah.
forget about tariffs. In general, of course, we will use our tools, which is the interest rate, to bring it back down to 2% over time.
Okay. Yesterday, you told the Senate we're going to release the stress test scenarios before we implement them. Will you take a holistic look at large bank capital requirements, including the risk-based capital ratios like Basel III Endgame, stress testing, to make sure that you don't have a contraction in the ability of credit to Main Street businesses?
Yes.
Great. There's a proposal in Project 2025 that we abolish Fannie and Freddie. If there was no explicit or implicit federal guarantee for those who invest in mortgages, would that lead to higher mortgage interest rates?
Since you'd no longer be borrowing on the credit of the United States, in other words, so Fannie and Freddie would be privately funded, it could lead to that. I think privatizing Freddie and Fannie might have other virtues too, though, as has been considered many times by this committee and others.
Might have some virtues, but it would lead to higher mortgage rates.
It could.
The CFPB has been put on ice, but all the regulations remain in force. So if you're a bank that wants to comply with those regulations, there's nobody that can give you any clarification. So you don't know. And if you're a bank that doesn't want to comply, the next presidential election may put into practice a CFPB that enforces all the regulations that the Trump administration has tried to eliminate. Does that cause confusion for banks?
You're speculating about what the situation might be. I would say that it could. Yeah.
I yield back.